We're the voice of the voiceless. Enough said.
Welcome back to Enough Said, hosted by Jemo, Carolite, and Cherry Poet. Today's topic is Black History Month, unsung heroes that we don't normally hear about. Jemo, what say ye?
Hey, hi everybody. I'm happy that we have a Black History Month, even though Black history should be taught throughout the year. But let me just, before we begin, just get the ones that we talk about all the time out the way. The Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Sojourner Truth, Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, and so many others. We just want to get them out the way and focus on the less talk about ones who have been very instrumental in carving and promoting Black history. What say ye, Carol?
Well, I want to start off by saying, for some people, they're happy with the little token that they decided to give Black people in America a month to remember 400 years of events by Black people, of happenings, and what they decided is, oh, we will give you a month. And I guess in their minds, Black people should be grateful. But I'm one of those people who is not. I am not happy that after 400 years, there's so many people that we can talk about, and yet we just get 1 month, and then this month is usually, again, focused on the typical, that you just mentioned, the Martin Luther Kings, the Harriet Tubman. What about other people? And that's what I would like to see happen differently going forward. We have exhausted Martin Luther King. I have a dream. I mean, we have heard the speech. And I think he stopped dreaming now. The dream is supposed to be realized. Not fully yet, but his dream. So let's move on to others that contributed and still contribute to the whole Black movement in America. Go ahead, Cherry Point.
Absolutely. One of the things that can be done is to promote the teaching of Black history in schools. They've been trying to get rid of it. Black people let it go, forget, but these things have to be taught in schools. They have to be from grade school all the way up to college. It should be something that is a must for everyone to learn. Another thing people could do is if you're a Black person, or if you're interested in Black history, don't just make it about February. Don't just make it about the 1 month. Do it all year long, promote it all year long, in your own space, to your own people. And if a lot more people do that, then it won't seem like it's just February. It's just the 1 month. If we all do our part and keep this message going throughout the year, then we could have Black history all year, every year. You know what I mean? So yeah, you're right. We always hear about Martin Luther King Jr. We always hear about Malcolm X, which, big up Malcolm X. We hear a lot about these people, but I found some
Before
info
you get to
here.
that, Cherry, let me just say I don't agree with you two at all. Now, this is why. There's so many young people coming up who don't even know who Martin Luther King is. There's so many young people coming up who never heard of Marcus Garvey. There's so many young people coming up who never heard of Malcolm X, Sojourner Truth, any of these people. You have to, and it doesn't have to be the I Have a Dream speech, because Martin Luther King did many other speeches, but you always have to refer and give respect to the founders and the elders, and you have to let the young people know who they are. Because
that's what I was saying about keeping the history going in schools and stuff. We're just talking about in general and on a regular basis, we as Black people need to keep up the dialogue and need to let people around us, friends, family, in our own circles. And if everybody does that, then more people will be the wiser of not just Martin Luther King and not just Malcolm X, but a host of other people that they should know.
Exactly. And what I would like to see, I would like for us to go back to our roots. Had it not been for the movie Roots, nobody would have heard of Kunta Kinte.
Well, not nobody.
You know, most Black people don't know one other African name of an African who came to America as a slave and made a difference because of their resilience, their bravery, their perseverance. I cannot even name an African name that contributed to the changes that happened for Black people in America apart from Kunta Kinte. And that's only because of a movie. You know, what we need to start doing is, so much of Black history is lost and so much of Black history has not been taught. But what they need to start doing is start from the very roots. It was not just Kunta Kinte that came over and ran away several times and then got his foot, amputated. There were other Black Africans that made a difference. Where are they? Who are they?
I can tell you one of them, and I don't know, I'm not going as far back because everybody who came over, we'd probably have to do some African history to find out some of those, but a lot of times back in those days, they didn't have anything to record their history. They changed their names. You know, remember, their whole culture was changed, and even the religion was changed. So a lot of it has not been documented, but I do know that there is a very important guy who was the second person, and I'm trying to remember his name now. He was the second person to graduate from Harvard School, and he helped form the Black movement and let us recognize African American as part of history. And W.E. Du Bois was the first Black person to graduate from Harvard University. And this gentleman that I'm talking about, he was the second one, and he was one that was instrumental in forming the Black History movement. And let me just say, 1 month is not enough. I can't tell Black people is just part of the story. You don't even have to say Black history, it's just history, it's just people. However, it's better than nothing, because prior to this, the only thing you heard about Black people was that they were slaves, and it's always negative, as if Black people didn't make brooms, Black people didn't invent so many things, electricity, we help invent so many things. You never heard about it. So when you had Black History Month, that gave a little bit of awareness. But eventually, when we evolve, we'll get to a point where we don't even have to say Black History Month. It's just history.
Correct.
Yeah, just so you know, a lot of people don't know this. The original Betty Boop was a Black woman, and of course, Betty Boop was stolen, and they made it into a huge success here, in the U.S. Using a white person. But the original Betty Boop was a Black woman. The original Lone Ranger was a Black man, and they're just starting to talk about it now, and it's funny. It was when I was doing jury duty, and I was taking the trolley back and forth to do jury duty for the 2-3 weeks, whatever it was. I was coming back on the trolley one day, and a older Black man just came up to me on the trolley and started telling me the history of the Lone Ranger. And he's like, look it up. And just the other day, maybe about a week ago, all of a sudden I hear that there's going to be a story about it on TV. And I'm like, wow,
so doing jury duty months ago. The audience wouldn't know when you were doing jury duty many months ago.
Right. So that was the first time I heard about it from the man on the trolley. And then now I'm hearing that someone's doing a story about it, because it is true. A lot of the Black stories, a lot of the Black people created things and did things that the white man stole, and his story is the only story you know.
Exactly. And this is
Before you go,
exactly
Carol, I found the name of the guy. His name is Cardo Woodson. That's the name of the guy that invented the whole awareness of Black people and Black History Month. Go ahead.
say his name again.
Carter Woodson.
A name I've never heard of.
See what
You
I
know,
mean?
Exactly.
Another unsung hero.
Unsung hero. And you know, if you notice my makeup today, it's a bit heavier than usual. I use the darker pencil and stuff. And the reason for that, as I'm putting it on, you know, I'm going, this whole painting of the face thing that we now call makeup, this also originated in Africa.
Wow.
Yeah.
As Cherry Point is saying, even the painting of the face, now labeled as makeup, and you would never have thought that this is also embedded in Black history. So as I was doing the makeup and I was doing the eyes, you know, I'm like, this feels like an African artwork, because this is what they did. And so much has been stolen that there is no way Black people should settle for 1 month of Black history. In fact, in my opinion, every month, at least a week of every month should be devoted to Black history, and they should be talking about all the things that has been robbed. And we also want to include for the Black Americans, they need to understand the contribution of Africans and the contribution of West Indians, other Blacks, other than Blacks that were born in America, who contributed to the movement. One famous one is Marcus Garvey, but we have many others. We have
Stokely Carmichael.
Yeah, Stokely Carmichael, he's from Trinidad. We have Harry Belafonte, whose parents are Jamaicans. They need to understand that it's just more than just a Black American thing. It was all the Blacks who migrated to America that was all together in this movement. Go ahead.
Malcolm X.
I was going to say something about Malcolm X. Malcolm X wanted to be called an Afro-American, you know, because he knew that everything comes from Africa. He knew the contributions that Africans made that we just don't hear about. But before we go on, let me tell you about someone you may not have heard about. Claudette Colvin, Montgomery, Alabama, in March of 1955, 9 months before Rosa Parks famously refused to give up her seat on the bus. This girl, Claudette Colvin, did the same thing 9 months before Rosa Parks did. But the only person you hear about is Rosa Parks. Now, Claudette Colvin was only 15 years old, and she refused to give up her seat. She was locked up in jail. And later on, she became one of the plaintiffs, one of 4 plaintiffs in a landmark 1956 case that ruled Montgomery's segregated bus system was unconstitutional. So we should remember her name, Claudette Colvin. Ladies and gentlemen, say her name. Claudette Colvin.
Claudette Colvin.
Power to her. Yeah, and let me just say that the Statue of Liberty is supposed to be a Black woman. Cleopatra, who they portray on TV all the time as white, was a Black woman. There's so many important Black figures in American history that often they make those people seem as if they were white. And the other thing I wanted to mention is I saw on TV today, Booker T. Washington, great, several greats down grandson, went to do a speech. And I'm sorry, not Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington is another very important figure. I meant Thomas Jefferson, who he had with Sally Hemings, the slave woman that he had several children with. He went to do a talk. And the first part of his talk was that I am the great grandson of Thomas Jefferson. and I was the product of the rape of a Black slave. And of course, he said that he don't think they'll invite him back anymore to do a talk, because when reality hit them, they get very upset. Let's not hide the truth, guys. The truth is the truth.
Wow. You know, you mentioned Stokely Carmichael. And you know, he was one that was he was around during the, you know, the Martin Luther King time. Again, we don't hear much about Stokely, but he was the one who I don't want to say the wrong word. He initiated the Black Power movement, the Black Power with the fist. And it's so important because even when he was gonna talk about Black Power, he felt that there could be some disapproval, or maybe not disapproval, but he wasn't sure that Martin Luther was on board with that philosophy. However, he went ahead, and this man got locked up several times. You can see some of his speeches on YouTube, but he's telling you how he was locked up just by, you know, initiating something called Black Power.
That's a shame.
Yeah. John Lewis said, you know, you got to get into necessary trouble because those men in those days marching, fighting for Black rights, they were locked up 10, 15, 20 times. Like jail was nothing for them, but it was necessary trouble.
Right.
You know, they had to get into that, and that's what they had to do, and we respect them for it. They didn't get locked up for drugs or you know, any illegal crimes that are bad. They got locked up for fighting for rights, and I applaud that. You know, Black history, however, is not just about people from the past. It's about Black people making history every single day of our lives.
Before we get to the new ones, Fred Hampton was one of the founders of the Black Panther Party, and he is from out of Chicago. He was with the Chicago branch, and their aim was just to unite Black people and to get respect for Black people. But they labeled that party, just like they're doing the Black Lives Matter movement today, as terroristic, as the savages, as the people who are trying to kill, and they killed so many Black Panther when all the people wanted when they started was to get people to appreciate Black people for who they are. So Black Panther Party is similar to the Black Lives Matter movement, where you have people down crying it on. All we say is Black Lives Matter. I'm just shocked that we even have to say it.
You can't be shocked if you live in this country, and it's not just this country. You know, remember South Africa. You know what I mean? Race is everywhere. It's in Russia. It's in the UK. It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
All over the world. Yeah.
Well, exactly. So you can't be shocked. You can't be shocked. We have to say it. Black Lives Matter.
This is the reason. This is the reason why racism should be a crime. And it really shocks me that even today we have people walking around free, people who did lynching, people who, you know, did so much horrific things against Black people in the United States of America. And they know who they are, and these people are not in jail. And the problem I have, when they do the wrong, up until today, there is not anything done to right the wrong. And that is what bothers me a lot. Like, what are you going to do to right the wrong? You know, when I look at guys like Stokely Carmichael, like Malcolm X, these are handsome young men, you know, who have, you can imagine their children and what their grandchildren, they would still be alive today. They would probably be in their 90s or late 80s, but they would have had children. You know, I know Malcolm X had children, grandchildren, and maybe even great grandchildren, people they could have molded to be great leaders in this society. And these people were either assassinated, killed, treated so badly, died much quicker, I'm thinking, than they would have had
Yeah,
they.
because they were assassinated. So definitely it's earlier than they would have. But let me
Yeah.
just say, I heard Malcolm X's daughter today. I think her name is Shabazz X or something. But she said that during the Black Lives Matter movement, Malcolm X's words were tweeted like 20,000 times a day. They had
Wow.
never seen so much tweets about his and repeat on social media, Facebook, or all social media about anything like during the Black Lives Matter, like now. You know, it had died down for a while. The people weren't talking much about Malcolm X, but now they're talking about him again. And she wanted to be known, because she's an activist, that, you know, these words are still pertinent to this day. But when you say handsome one, never forget Harry Belafonte.
Oh,
What a
wow.
good looking man he was. And he was behind the Martin Luther King movement.
He's still alive. He still is.
Yeah, he's still alive.
Right.
And he was a financier, along with other people, white people like Marlon Brando, you know, other Italians, undercover, sent money in to support the movement, you know, that Martin Luther King was a part of.
Right.
Yeah, but you know, you mentioned that Malcolm X's daughter said this year more than any, you know, so many people are sharing Malcolm X's quotes, and that's
last year. I should say last year during the Black Lives Matter, and this year. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but that's because now 50 years later, people are hearing him.
Exactly.
You know, the whole thing was, oh, you know, let's big up Martin Luther King. So that's where all the support went from white folk. You know what I mean? Because he's speaking peace, but Malcolm X was speaking truth. Malcolm X was telling you what I knew when I was going to school as an elementary student. You know, a bully will never stop bullying you unless you punch him in the face. You have to fight back. A bully will never let up on you until you step on him, you know. And that's the way Malcolm X talked, and that's what white people feared. And so they shut it down, they held it down and bigged up Martin Luther King Jr., you know, and now people are realizing that everything Malcolm X said about police brutality and everything we see going on is exactly what's going on now, 50 years later.
It's a balancing act. I agree with Malcolm X. And I know in some cases peaceful protests don't work, but sometimes you have to use peaceful protests just to live longer sometimes, just to let them hear sometimes. But I agree, sometimes you have to fight back. But to me, it's a balancing act.
It's a balancing act, but what needs to be taught is that nothing changed by just talking. We are still experiencing the same thing Martin Luther King experienced with George Floyd and with all those men that they killed last year, because just marching and nothing changes. They killed Breonna Taylor, the cops got off because they're white. Now they killed George Floyd. All of a sudden you hear nothing. What's going on with those guys? And I think they're all out of jail.
Yeah.
So this America.
Yeah, and you still see police killings. You just saw he slammed one girl I think it was in Florida, slammed her to the ground, and she went unconscious. I mean, these things are still happening.
Nothing changes.
Nothing stops these cops. Nothing stops these cops.
Nothing changes if nothing changes. What America has done, and I'm calling out America, they have stifled Black history. They have made Black people believe that the worst thing that happened was lynching. And as horrible as lynching was, did you know they used to bury the Black man alive, leave his head out for the insects and the ants to eat that person alive. So
that's not considered lynching too? I thought lynching was the whole thing, everything when they killed you.
Lynching is hanging. Is the hanging on the tree. When they used to bury the Black people, when they used to take the knives and skin them, skin them like we do animals,
Yeah.
alive.
Wow.
At least in a hanging, you die, and you die quickly. In a burying of being buried alive, and then you have insects and ants and everything eating you until you die. That is horrific, and none of that is taught. So what they need to do is get real with the reality of how horrific it is. And the reason I do want to mention this lady, you know, because just to give you an idea of how horrific it is real quick, Margaret Garner. Nobody talks about Margaret. Margaret was born on the plantation of John Pollard Gaines in Boone County, Kentucky. And she was a slave. She ended up marrying a guy. She had kids. Then they escaped to Cincinnati. When they got to Cincinnati, where they had 3 relatives, guess what? They found them. And rather than them bringing her back to slavery, she slit her 2-year-old's throat. Point is, Margaret Garner would prefer to slit the throat of her kids than to live in slavery. Can you imagine how horrific slavery
Well,
was?
you know something, they would see her as a criminal because she did that. We see her as a hero because she did that. So, you know, it depends on whose eyes are looking. I see her as a hero, not wanting to go back into a horrific, disgusting situation. And, you know, those are the, like we said, the unsung heroes that we don't hear about every day, that we can't talk about all the time, that we should learn about in history. And history, you know, it's Black history, but there should just be, you know, should be just history of everybody. It should just be incorporated in history lessons, period. But because we know they don't, that's why we say Black history, but hopefully in time to come, it will just be history. And someone mentioned the current, I can tell you, current people, you know, other than Obama, you know, and, you know, maybe whenever you want to talk about Kamala Harris, they're making history. You know, you had something, Caroline, to say about whether they're the first Black to do this or the first Black to do that. But I wanted to pick up Amanda Gorman. Boy, she's part of Black history. What a wonderful poet that was. I'm proud of her as a Black person. She's only 22 years old.
Yeah. Okay, let me quickly tell you about another Black woman from history that we should know. Her name is Patricia Bath. She was an ophthalmologist and inventor. And she actually became the first Black female physician to receive patents for medical inventions, including the ultrasound probe. So give it up for the women. We've always been great, and we'll die great.
And there are hundreds of more of those stories.
You know, if you look into Wikipedia about all the Black inventors, I mean, hundreds of people,
if not thousands,
you know, and you don't hear much about them. Even the guy who they have a movie about this guy who he was able to do the heart surgery on the babies who were turning blue, who were blue. He was a Black guy, and he so many Blacks that contributed. But I do want to say, in terms of Jem saying the first Black, I don't subscribe to that language. The reason is, had all Blacks gotten an opportunity to do something, then I would say, oh, this is the first Black person who did it. But it's the first Black that you allowed in Harvard. It's the first Black that you allowed in Yale. Because had more Blacks been allowed to enter these fields, or to enter the school, or to enter tennis or golf, had more of us been allowed in, I'm not sure that Tiger Woods would be the first Black too, or the sister, the Williams.
Serena Williams.
They would not have been the first Black. You had great Black people who were athletes, but half of them, guess what? Somebody killed them.
It's a first known Black. So it's the first.
Right. So it's the first known Black. And before we go, we're running out of time. I just want to tell you about another name that we might not know. and the name is Harold Amos. Harold Amos, and he's the first African-American to serve as a department chair at Harvard Medical School. We've done some things. Our people have done some things. We weren't born slaves, we were born kings and queens. And once we get that in our heads, we understand that we are what it is.
So how can we not mention Cicely? We couldn't end this Black History thing. Because again, let's say, where was she born, Jem? Nevis, St. Kitts?
She was born in Harlem, New York. Her parents were from Nevis, St. Kitts and Nevis, Caribbean Island.
Correct. So here we go again with a Caribbean touch, because one thing I don't hear a lot, including when they're talking about Kamala Harris, you hear a lot about her Indian mother, but you don't hear about her Jamaican father.
That's true.
It's important that we start recognizing other people from the islands and other Black people who have come to America who have made great contributions. Yes, they were, Kamala was born here, but it was her parents, and her dad is Jamaican. Cicely, her parents are from Nevis, St. Kitts, and here is she in that movie world, which is so prejudiced back in her day, and for her to make it,
and even now, so I know what she went through was a whole lot more than a lot of us could bear at this particular time.
Exactly.
Sidney Poitier.
Yeah,
she was from the Bahamas.
Right. At one point, Cicely said she was almost raped, you know, as a young person in that business. And that's a typical story for a lot of young women in that business. Sidney Poitier, remember, these people have to choose roles, that some of the roles that are just horrific. Unfortunately, for example, Halle Berry, it's not until she sleep with a white guy that she got an Emmy award, and the woman could act.
Current, my mother Mildred will be
my son Shane Clark, may he rest in peace.
Once again, we want to say RIP, rest in perfect peace to Cicely Tyson. Happy Black History Month. Keep it up, keep it going in your own circles, spread the word, never let it go, because our history is not to be forgotten, because we are an unforgettable people. We've done so much, we've accomplished so much throughout the years, all through fighting, all through the war, all through stepping through fire. It's never been easy for us. So, just be proud of yourself, pat yourself on the back, and know that you are one of the great ones. Believe in yourself and love yourself and love your history, teach your history. We all just want to say, rest in perfect peace to Miss Cicely Tyson.
Say it loud. I'm Black and I'm proud.
We've all grown up watching over the years, doing such great work in movies and TV. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to Enough Said podcast TV show.
And to all the unsung heroes that we have lost, those unknown soldiers.
And rest in peace.
Rest in peace, and make sure you go beyond what you're taught. Read books, go to the library, research some things, because when you read other things, it really, enlighten you about so many things that we don't hear about.
And grounding, and keeps us grounded as a people. I'm holding up my African balls here.
And let me just say, rest in peace to all the Black people who died, whether from COVID or Black Lives Matter or whatever reason. Rest in peace, my son Shane. Thank you.
Thank you again for tuning in to Enough Said podcast TV show, hosted by Gemmo, Carolite, and Cherry Poet. We'll see you next time. Do remember to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, subscribe on YouTube, and remember, we are the voice
of the voiceless.
Black Black Lives Matter.
Current events, injustice, police brutality, systematic racism, politics. What say ye? Enough said.
I'm black and I'm proud. Say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud.
Say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud.